Welcome to the City of Chicago Department of Procurement Services. This training that we're going to review today will be contract payment tracking. Some of the items that we'll discuss will be roles and responsibilities of the prime subcontractor and the reporting of payments, the email notification process, the importance of the subcontractor payment confirmations, payment discrepancies, and who to contact when assistance is needed. What you see up on the PowerPoint now is the compliant audit process. It's a 6 to 7 step process. Beginning the first of the month, the prime is notified by email. Then from that step, the next step would be the prime would enter the payment data into the system for the subcontractors, excuse me, who are then notified by email or fax. The next step would be for the subcontractor to confirm or to reject the payments. If the subcontractor confirms the payments, then the process is complete. If the subcontractor looks at the payment that's reported and determined that it's not accurate, then a discrepancy is generated in the system. It is at that point that the subcontractor and the prime contractor contact each other and discuss how the payment discrepancy can be cleared. The next slide and the step 1 in the process is the prime contractor logs into the dashboard. The dashboard in the C2 monitoring system, and that's the system that we use to report our payments. Is everybody familiar with the C2 monitoring system? That's good. What you see now is the dashboard. The dashboard and the highlighted area, which we're going to focus in on today, is contract audits. In addition to the contract audit screen, which we'll discuss, there's a list of the contracts that you're currently on, workforce audits, certification applications, if you have any, your certifications and their status, as well as questionnaires, and if you've withdrawn any of your requests. Step 2 in the process is the prime contractor selects incomplete audits. And you can see in the step 2 of the process, it's highlighted incomplete audits, April 2015, which is the one we're going to review today. Do you have any questions? No. Okay. Step.
Yes, I have a question.
Go ahead.
It indicated in the previous slide that, the one before that, it indicated that the audits begin in the first of the month. The first of the month, if a contract is awarded, let's say for example, January 2016, but payments against that contractor haven't begun until June of 2016. Do the audits begin the first month after the contract is awarded, or after the first payment has been made against the contract?
The question is if the audits begin after the first payment is generated or when the contract is awarded. And the answer to that question is when the first payment is generated on the contract. So your payment could be, your contract could actually be awarded in January of 2016, but you don't begin work on it until June of 2016. Then that's when your payments then you would be required to complete your audits, because then you would receive your first payment from the City of Chicago.
And then audits begin every month thereafter?
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. The slide that you see in step 4 shows you how, if you're the prime contractor, how to submit your payments. The screen shows, and which is highlighted in red, the submit, if you select this option, it says to submit all incomplete records. And you would select this option if you have multiple subcontractors. If you have more than one subcontractor, this option will highlight and provide you with all the information as it relates to all of your subcontractors on the project. And if you look at the bottom of the screen, you'll see what will be highlighted. To the left of the screen is the name of your subcontractors. Right of that would be the total payments received to date. To the right of that would be the payment that you're going to currently report. The option to select if it's a payment date and a prompt payment, and that would be within 7 days. You can either select yes, Y, N, no, or not applicable. The next box would be the payment detail and comments field. You can put details in there if you're making multiple payments. Because this contractor is on multiple projects, you might want to provide that information there as well as the check number. You can also, there's an option here to select if you want to add some documentation to it. Now our next screen, or step 4, is a duplicate of the previous screen, but it's the process that supports reporting one payment at a time. So the subcontractor is highlighted. You can submit the response, and once the response is submitted, you'll see the audit information screen will come up next. So that's the screen underneath that first section. Gives you the same option, but in singular format instead of for multiple subcontractors. It's listed for one subcontractor at a time. You would enter the amount that would be paid, the payment date, the prompt payment option, if applicable, any payment details that you might have, in addition to any supportive documentation. And you can also make a note that would just be seen by the certification officer on the contract. There's a reason that you want to provide a special note for the certification officer if at one point we would review it and have a question that you would be able to answer that you, while you were entering the payment, then you would put that information in at that time. Any questions? Well, you could do, in relationship to the payment would be what you would upload. You can upload your Excel spreadsheet, any copies of canceled checks, invoices. I beg your pardon? You can upload the invoice that you're paying. The question is what types of documents can be uploaded. You can upload your Excel spreadsheets, any canceled checks, any data or information, paper documentation that relates to the payment that you're entering can be uploaded into the system. Sure. You could get more than one notification, but I would like to know a little bit more about your example. It could be for different projects for the same contract, and the question is, why would you receive multiple notices for the same contract on the same contract for that same month? And you could receive multiple notices. It can be done that way, but it would be time-consuming to enter payments more than once a month. The process supports entering one lump sum payment and providing an explanation for the payment. You could enter them that way, but again, it would be a bit time-consuming. You're welcome. Any additional questions right now? Okay, let's move on to our next step in the process. This process would be the subcontractor completing the incomplete audits. So as you can see, the prime contractors entered and reported their payment. Now the next step would be the option available for the subcontractor to go in and confirm the payment that the subcontractor is claiming that the prime contractor is making to the subcontractor. So this option will determine, and the next slide will show you the option available to the subcontractors and what the subcontractor sees after the prime contractor has reported the payment. As you can see, the audit information would support the dollar amount that was paid. Underneath it, it lists the check number, the invoice number, and the date that the payment was made. It requests, and these are the options made for the subcontractor to confirm that the dollar amount is correct. The subcontractors would either confirm that it was correct, that it was incorrect. The next option would include whether or not this was a final payment, if the work was completed on the project or if the project would continue. The next option asks about the retainage being held. And it also gives the subcontractor the option to attach documentation to support an incomplete or an incorrect payment. Any additional questions? Does that look familiar if you're a subcontractor? Have you seen that screen before? Yes. Okay, our next slide.
I have a question.
Sure, go ahead.
Ms. Howard. Trying to piggyback on your lady's question on the regarding the previous slide. I believe, because in the past I just actually received one notification for one specific month, but I have received multiple notifications under one specific contract, but it pertained to different months, different audit notices. So telling me that I had not submitted a response for multiple months. So there were multiple notifications that were sent out under one contract. I work with a prime contractor that I usually receive multiple payments in 1 month. So I just report a lump sum in that audit notice. So that's how I have it worked out with the prime contractor, is that, again, I receive multiple payments within a specific month, but I actually report a lump sum to the prime contractor because that's how we worked it out with regard to the reporting. And then what we do is the prime contractor usually lists out those individual payments into the C2 system so that everyone can see it. I can see it as well as the compliance officer. That is okay to do, is it?
Yes, that's fine. And the question or the statement is that there's an agreement between the prime contractor and the sub. Sub is on multiple projects, and what the prime and the sub have agreed on is that the prime will report a lump sum payment, provide any associated detail that relates to all of the projects that they're working on, check numbers, invoices, and numbers, and the subcontractor will go in and report and confirm the amount paid. And it will be up to the subcontractor to confirm that amount along with the invoices received. And it's an agreement that the sub has with the prime contractor because they're on multiple projects. And that's acceptable. As long as there's a trail in place, we looked at it and we had a question about the amount that was being reported. There's an explanation there with documentation to support how it was done, then that's fine. And the question is, can the prime contractor make a lump sum payment if they haven't been paying anything? There, you are required to report on a monthly payments made to your subcontractor, as well as 0 months when you don't pay anything. So you're required to report every month, no matter if you're paying or if you're not paying. This example or statement supports a prime contractor is not doing either. So after review of the contract by the certification officer has determined that the prime contractor is not making payments. So the prime contractor notifies, the certification officer notifies the prime saying you're not reporting. Since the prime contractor is years behind, then what may, and this is an agreement that after discussion and supportive documentation as well, the certification officer may determine that with a lump sum payment, they could bring the records up to date, note the records that you have with the documentation, invoices, or cancel checks in the system, and a lump sum payment or a true-up payment to bring the C2 system up to date as far as the audits were concerned. And yes, that's acceptable. Any more questions? So we'll move on to the next slide. And the next slide is payment discrepancies. Now, if a prime contractor and a subcontractor disagree on an amount paid, the system creates a discrepancy automatically. And the previous slide asked whether or not the payment was correct. If the payment was correct, there would be no discrepancy. If you selected incorrect, then a discrepancy would generate in the system. Since the system then sends an email message to the vendor or the prime to notify them of the issue and request they self-resolve the discrepancy. Since you have a contractual agreement with the prime contractor and the sub, then it's up to you to initially to work through any payment errors or discrepancies together. And most often, in most situations, you can work those things out. It's on occasion that the certification officer can step in and assist. And more often than not, we see the discrepancies a lot sooner than the prime contractor sees them. So we would go into the system and see if there's something that we can see, information that's been provided by either side, so we can resolve the discrepancy. If that information is not available to us, then what we would do is contact the prime and the sub and find out the necessary details so we can resolve the discrepancy. Yes.
Ms. Howard, will the city provide assistance to subcontractors in the event we're not getting paid? So let's take, for example, I have been submitting invoices to my private contractor for payment, and they're 3 months behind. Can I reach out to the city of Chicago and request that they intervene on my behalf in trying to get repaid?
Yes. The question is if the prime contractor is not paying the subcontractor, and whether or not the City of Chicago or the Department of Procurement Services Certification Compliance Unit can assist in supporting the subcontractor or the WBEDB firm or MB firm in resolving the issues with the prime. And yes, we want to hear from you as soon as possible. You don't necessarily want to wait till you're months behind on payments. Again, payments are supposed to be reported by the prime on a monthly basis. If you're not receiving your payment, especially if you're performing, then we want to hear about that. Yes, you have to report 0 payments, even if you haven't paid your subcontractors. And the example, one of my favorite examples is if you're doing a construction project and you have a landscaper. The landscaper more than likely won't do any work to the end of the project. You would still have to report 0 payments. And in our previous discussion, it also supports you getting into the habit of responding to the system, because you're getting a system-generated notice that you should respond to and be in the habit of reporting that. Any additional questions? I'd also like to make mention in regards to discrepancy, one of the most frequent errors that we run across as far as discrepancy, and it's when if the prime contractor reports the payment at the end of the month, and you're doing your due diligence as far as reporting or responding to payments that are reported to the prime contractor. Prime contractor reports on the 29th, and the payment doesn't actually show up into the system till September 1st. So they reported in August, but the payment is correct in the dollar amount, but it was not reported in, as the prime said, in August. It was reported in August, but not received by you till September. You would go in and confirm that payment as the correct amount received, and that would be accurate in confirming that payment, because the dollar amount, it would be the focus, and as long as the dollar amount is accurate, then that would be a payment that you would confirm. Any additional questions? Well, we have a small class today. Go ahead, Tina.
My prime contractor reported the payment for the month of June, and I confirmed that payment, but I went back in my records to notice that I was actually paid less than what was reported. How do I fix that?
Well, what you can do, and her question is that initially she confirmed a payment as accurate, and then she went back and checked her records to discover that no, it was less or more than what was originally reported. What you want to do at that point is you can contact your certification and compliance officer for assistance, or you can, because we're going to have to do something in the system to accept the change with documentation, and you would send that to your certification and compliance officer attention. And with that information, we would either make the update in the system, or we would go and contact as well as, we would do both. We'd make an update in the system, but we would need confirmation from the prime contractor to confirm the documentation that you have sent to us is accurate. But we would support you in that process. Yes?
Ms. Howard, one of our contracts that we have with the city of Chicago, one of them, when that got awarded, the compliance officer that was listed on the Schedule D is no longer with the company, and that's the person that had the access to the C2 system. If our company wants to add or delete users, number one, can we do that? And number two, how do we do that?
We have two-fold question here. It's the initial person that was set up in the system is no longer employed, and how do you go in and make those the corrections, or whether or not you can actually make those corrections yourself. Yes, as the vendor, you can go in and make those corrections. You can copy and deactivate any user that's in the system, and if you need assistance with that, you can contact your certification compliance officer. I also have a couple business cards that I brought. You can contact me directly. I'll direct you to the certification and compliance officer that's responsible for that, or I'll assist you myself. Yes?
I have been trying to make payments to my subcontractors, but for some reason it won't let me. So I'm locked out.
The question is, the gentleman is trying to make payments to their subcontractors, but they're locked out. There's a time frame for reporting payments. You should be responding to those payments on a monthly basis. If you're not responding to your payments and reporting on a monthly basis, you get time out in the system. Contact your certification compliance officer, and what they'll do is give you an extension, 2-week extension as far as the time is concerned, so you can go in and report your payments. Any additional questions? Next.
What is the business hours? Should the payment be reported to the receiver or to the month that it was? I have one time the last report my bill that I submitted in June versus the other contract, the other time that they reported the payments of the month that I received.
are to, as the prime contractor, you should confirm your payments each month. So if you make a payment in June, then you should report it in June. If you're performing in June,
So it has to be for the month that we receive it after the contract,
you are, the month that you're performing.
You know, usually I'm a sub on contracts. I'm not a prime, but the prime contractor usually goes in, let's take for example, we may use January. So for services that I perform, for services that I've already performed on and received payment in the month of December, that payment that got made in the month of December, the audit notice goes out went out in January. So I'll report payments, I'll confirm payments based off of checks that I received from the prior month. That's how that's how I've been reporting into the system. Based off of service, in actuality, services were performed 2 months ago, but I received my first payment in December, and then I actually reported it in January, because the audit notice went out in January. So I don't know if that's, I believe that's correct, because I've been doing it for years now, and, you know, it's.
No, that isn't, that is correct.
Is that similar to what you
Is-
have been doing?
I've been doing it that way, even though the prime is reporting it for the month that I bill, like 2 months before, not the month that I got the check. So I was wondering if this is the preference of what the first is.
I believe it would be the month you got the check.
That's what I
Based off
always
the
tell the prime, but
payments.
they have their own.
I would confirm that it would be the month that you got the check, but I also like to focus in on the dollar amount that you're actually receiving. I think that the month, reporting on the month is what you're required to do, and on the same line as far as our focus is concerned, it should be an accurate reporting of what you've actually been paid. So I guess I go dotted line to the date that you're actually receiving it. And yes, you should, as prime contractor and then as a sub, you should confirm what you're receiving. But on that same line, it should be whether or not the amount that you're confirming is the accurate amount based on what you should be receiving. Does that make sense?
I would call my compliance officer if I was you to let them know, how that people's payments are being reported.
But we always have a lot of discrepancies because we're going back into the government for the credit. Thank you, Nicole.
You're welcome. Sure, go ahead.
As prime, so when we would report payment being made, that would be visible in the check. Does that make sense? So for example, if we have a check that was, cut and sent to the subcontractor, we would do a piece that show that would be, that it would April, payment reporting.
Yes, that's correct. You're welcome. Do you have any other questions that you might need answered? Something specific to your business?
You mentioned previously when you follow up on your questions, if the account cemetery is getting, is on the system but no longer is merged with the organization, do you find that information on the compliance diversity website, the C2 website?
Yes.
Okay. There's not another vendor website that should do?
No, definitely not as far as C2 is concerned. And you can go into, either the sub or the prime, if you go to the sub tab, It'll give you options to the right of the screen, I believe, that you can select that will give you an opportunity to view the user tab. And from the user tab, you should be able to go in and make any changes or alterations that you might need. And I'll leave my business card with you so you can contact me directly. Any additional questions? Well, I'd like to thank you very much for coming today. We have the meetings once a month, or the trainings once a month. If you have any additional questions, to sign up for DPS alerts so you can be alerted as well as any opportunities with the City of Chicago. Thank you.